Joe Biden and Donald Trump will square off in a crucial U.S. presidential debate that carries enormous stakes for both candidates. The prize they will be fighting for will be the approval of undecided voters and any slim advantage in their neck-and-neck race to the White House. Both sides have agreed to a series of debate rules aimed at minimizing the prospect of a shouting match. There will be no studio audience and microphones will be cut out when candidates' speaking time is over. With only 2 debates this election cycle and national polls showing the pair locked in the tightest of contests, the event at CNN headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, takes on heightened significance for many voters. Both contestants come with sizable handicaps. President Biden, as the oldest ever incumbent, and Trump, now a convicted felon. For Trump, an instinctive political pugilist, the challenge will be to rein in the aggressive tendencies he unleashed in their first chaotic debate 4 years ago. The 81-year-old Biden will be desperate to avoid any major gaffes that could underline concerns about his age. Biden has to focus on his key campaign message that Trump poses an existential threat to U.S. democracy. To coincide with the debate, both camps unleashed a series of fresh tax ads. Trump's team took out TV spots accusing Biden of mismanaging the economy and encouraging illegal immigration. In a morning post on his Truth Social platform, Trump argued that Biden was the real threat to democracy and a threat to the survival and existence of our country itself. The Democratic Party, meanwhile, paid 5 massive billboards in Atlanta, trolling Trump over his legal woes. Donald, welcome to Atlanta for the first time since becoming a convicted felon. Congrats or whatever, the sign said. Trump enjoys a slight advantage in the all-important swing states, but the overall polling looks extremely close to an election likely to be decided by a few photos. Finishes in a handful of battlegrounds now. The latest Quinnipiac University poll shows Trump edging ahead of Biden nationally, 49% to 45%. Biden has spent the last week at the Camp David retreat near Washington, fine-tuning his attack lines in mock debates under real TV lightning. Trump's preparation has been more relaxed, avoiding dress rehearsals in favor of informal policy roundtables and workshopping debate strategy with rally crowds. Aides have encouraged him to focus on his perceived strength on the economy and crime, while Biden will seek to paint Trump as unfit for office. Now, with this historic face-off mere hours away, let's give you a refresher on some basic rules of the engagement both men have agreed to. The President Joe Biden and former President Donald Trump will face off in a 90-minute debate. American broadcast channel CNN will be acting as host for the entirety of the debate. Uncharacteristically, no studio or live audience will be present to witness and give live reactions. Both candidates will be given a pen, a pad of paper, and a bottle of water. Any other objects or props will not be allowed. Podium positions will be determined by the flip of a coin, wherein the victor gets to choose which side he stands. Now, no opening statements will be permitted by either leaders. Microphones will be muted throughout the debate, except for when the candidate whose turn it is to speak. Following each speech, the 2 leaders will have 2 minutes to answer questions, followed by a minute each for rebuttals and responses to those rebuttals. The debate will feature 2 commercial breaks. And during those 2 commercial breaks, staff from either leader's campaigning entourage will not be allowed to interact with their respective candidate. It remains to see how many of these rules are respected and how many are tested. Now, for more on this, we are now being joined by our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York. It's good to see you, Susan. Now, how does it look like on ground, both the camps, red and blue? What does it look like on ground now?
Well, we are less than 30 minutes away from this debate, an unusual debate, as you mentioned, with no studio audiences, microphones being muted. And then about an hour or 2 ago, we learned that even the White House press pool, meaning journalists from other networks, won't be allowed in the room during the debate either. one of the main concerns for CNN was that there might be some kind of medical emergency, that they just left it at that. So that has caused some uproar, notably from the White House press corps. They released a statement, and also, people online are a little bit frustrated because, in journalism, we call this color. You want to get the full picture of the room from various journalists, and that's not going to happen either. So we're going to be watching. Everyone is going to be watching from far away. During commercial breaks, some journalists will be allowed to go inside, and then they would have to come out and watch the debate later as well. It's rumored that CNN wants to give a 1 to 2 minute delay of the airing of the debate as well. So, these are just some of the logistics that people will be talking about, days after the event. But ultimately, voters will be looking not only at the performances of these two men, but also whether or not they'll focus on policy and which of them can make their lives better.
Talk about voters. Now, there is a part there, of course, people have decided who to vote, and there are some undecided voters. How important do you think do they hold as of now, looking at the first presidential debate?
Yeah, it will be those undecided voters, and it'll be those battleground states that will ultimately determine who will be the next president of the United States. As you mentioned, many have made up their minds. There are some experts that believe this debate so early on, even before the conventions, isn't really going to move the needle so much. But there are those that are saying, and there was an AP poll that also mentioned, many voters, the majority of them, will be tuning in at least some part of the debate and watching and seeing how these two men perform. So the undecided voters, absolutely, they are the most important. Usually they're more moderate than, the Democrats and the Republicans. How these two men will perform ultimately, are they going to make their decision tonight, or are they going to still remain undecided?
Susan, just stay with us. I'm just going to go to our guest now, Mark Mirowitz. He's a lawyer and political commentator and a professor at State University of New York Maritime College. He's joining us live from New York. Thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Now, what are you looking at this first presidential debate? What are the topics which you will be looking out for?
Well, I think that the key issues here are as follows. Very quickly, the economy, based on the numbers that Biden touts and said we have a wonderful economy, and the fact that many people feel that everything is expensive, gas and food, and how they perceive the economy. Immigration is a gigantic issue because the border is open. Trump closed the border, and Biden essentially opened the border, and that is an unbelievable difficulty. Abortion is a gigantic issue, and it's been heightened in connection with the Supreme Court. Foreign policy is very important, but the big issue is age, personality, and ability to govern. And that's been the big story. And this is an early debate. How are Biden and Trump going to behave in this debate? And they're going to show their capacity to govern. And there have been all these questions about Biden and the fact that the special counsel said, well, Biden's too old in the documents case, and he's not competent to stand trial, yet he's running for president. Also, the vice presidential pick, and that's Kamala Harris. Her numbers are even lower than Biden's, and she could be a real issue, and wondering why she hasn't been replaced, because if there are questions with Biden, why not bring on a different vice president? On the Trump side, there's an interesting question there about the vice president as well, and a number of his possible picks, Rubio, Vance, Burgum, Scott, and others, are going to be present tonight in the building when the debate takes place. So all in all, I think the other point is going to be January 6th and all of Trump's lawsuits. And I think Biden is going to hammer on that. And lastly is, of course, as described, and Susan very well explained and you explained the whole setup here, the fact is, how are they going to handle each other with this kind of rule that they're going to mute the mics and all that? That's going to be very strange. I don't know how these two gentlemen are going to handle that. I think it's going to be I think it would be better if they let them speak and not mute mics. And that's again, their choice that they agreed to do that. But I think that overall, these are the big issues, including foreign policy, which is usually not a big issue in terms of against the economy and day-to-day survival. But the war in Ukraine is raging, and there's war in the Middle East. And as I think you reported, there is war in the northern part of Israel, and that could go out of control as well. And Trump's argument is, I had no wars when I was president. So that one will come up as well. Which is more important? I think the economy, I think it was Clinton or someone said it's the economy stupid, and that is economy, jobs, how is my life now? And the famous expression, am I better off now than I was, when Biden took office? Trump will say, no, I had a great economy, I did a great job. And Biden will say, I'm doing a great job, please reelect me. So there's a lot floating around here. But at the end of the day, how they behave, their demeanor, and whether they can hold up in the entire debate and not make incredible errors or also show inability to focus and function, that will be the key element here, I think, for the American people. And there's a lot of concern about Biden. So that's kind of where I'm at.
True. Now, you talked about both of them. They're octogenarians, least to say. Now, Trump, we have, in terms of convict, we have Trump, who is convicted of 34 felony counts, while Biden's, of course, Trump did pick up the Hunter Biden's issue in last debate, if you remember. And of course, it seems like this is going to be again picked up right now. How do you look at this angle?
Well, if it could deteriorate into, Trump talking about Hunter Biden's laptop and Biden talking that, Trump, hey, you're a convicted felon. As you indicated, the billboards are up there saying, hey, hi, Donald, you're here, you're a convicted felon and all that. So it looks like the Democrats are really emphasizing that. I think that a lot of those cases, when looked at more carefully, will probably be overturned on appeal. And Trump has been pushing forward and having successful rallies, notwithstanding all of those lawsuits. Definitely there's a cloud over Trump, no doubt about it. But, it's a question of demeanor. Are they going to hurl invectives against each other like they did in 2020? They're not going to be able to do it with the microphone. But, the demeanor of the debate is going to be very, very important, whether they can hold up and act in a rational fashion, or whether they're going to go off the wall and start, as they did in 2020, Biden calling Trump a clown and all of that, then that starts to get very problematic. So I think that the lawsuits are out there. They're definitely in the air. But the truth of the matter is that the Republican base has grown in its support of Trump, despite all of the indictments and the convictions. He's raised more money as a result of the indictments and the convictions. Right. And it's Biden who is going to Hollywood to raise money from the, glitterati and the entertainment industry. But Trump is out there giving rallies, for example, in the Bronx, New York, which, by the way, is not a very sympathetic Republican stronghold. I know Susan will understand this very well, living in New York as well. Bronx is not a Republican, but he went there. And he goes to places which are not necessarily friendly to him. He's trying to build his base, but the Republican base that supports him has been very, very supportive. Absolutely. And hasn't changed over all of these legal issues.
Well, you say that, of course, when you talk about Susan, of course, Susan might have some questions as well for you. Let's go to her as well.
Yeah, I think Mark really described the conviction issue very favorably. Mark, I want to get your opinion about David Axelrod, Obama's former advisor, on CNN said, and this was a stunning admission coming from a Democrat, he said just about half an hour ago that if President Biden tries to defend his record during this debate, then he will lose the audience and the voter. What he has to do is basically essentially go after Donald Trump. And, from a Democrat, that's a stunning admission on the one hand. And on the other hand, you mentioned the convictions that, of course, President Biden will bring up. But you also mentioned that it seems that also made Trump more popular. So, what is Biden's game plan here?
Look, the magic elixir for winning this election is in the realm of it's incredible. Who knows the answer? Now, David Axelrod, I have to say, I'm not a fan of his. I've heard a lot of his opinions and a lot of things, and much of what he says is really about desperation on the part of the Democratic Party and President Obama, who has been trying to buttress Biden and save him from losing this election. I do really think that Biden should defend his record. I mean, that's what the American people want to hear about. Not to go after Trump, but to tell the American people what he's done and why he's entitled to another term. I mean, again, this kind of twisted spin on the part of the Democratic pundits, and in fact, there have been like 20 people sitting with the president in Camp David. Maybe Axelrod was one of them. If this is what they're feeding him the wrong training for this debate. His key is to show he's competent, he's done a good job, and that he deserves another term. Not Trump is bad and Trump is this and Trump is that. I think, and I'm not David Axelrod, and I was an advisor in the White House, but the truth is, I think that one has no weight whatsoever. I think it's wrong, because the Trump issues out there, everybody knows it. And again, I think the key point here is the inability of the Democrats and their allies to understand the common American person here. Hillary Clinton called the Trump voters deplorables. Do you understand what that means? That means that if you vote for Trump, you're a deplorable person. This is not correct. That there are people out there who support Trump, and the Democrats cannot fathom how anybody would support him. This is Axelrod philosophy. Go after Trump and show he's a bad person. But the truth of the matter is that the more he got convicted and the more, as you just indicated, he gets more support. And where does Biden need to go? He needs to go to Hollywood. He has a lot of people in Hollywood, entertainers, literati, multimillionaires. Those are the ones who are supporting him. But Trump is going to the Bronx. He's going to Middle America. He's going all over the place, including blue states. So I think that there's an unbelievable misperception. And by the way, when you said it was David Axelrod on CNN, right away, we need to have a grain of salt about that. Because it's CNN, it's David Axelrod. So it's not exactly, I would say, an unbiased opinion in terms of what this is about, and why they would make that point on national television is to kind of maybe skewer the view of the electorate while they're watching this program. I don't know, but I question that those ideas. I don't think they really work. I think he's wrong in what he's saying. But again, I could be wrong, and we'll see what happens in the election.
Yeah, Mark, I just thought it was really interesting that you said that Biden should go ahead and defend his record. What is he going to defend? I mean, he's going to talk about the numbers and bring all of these charts, bring them up and the polls and everything. But when the average American is looking and watching, they're looking at their pocketbooks. They're still going to the grocery store and seeing that the prices are too high. Nothing is matching. Is he going to defend his record on the border? Well, the illegal migration is out of hand. Is he going to defend his record on crime? So there are a number of things perhaps he can talk about, abortion and whatnot. But, we'll have to see what his strategy is in defending himself.
I think that the one point that I saw on MSNBC, by the way, was they now are summarizing the fact that, well, when Biden became president, look what Trump did during COVID. Millions of people had COVID, and so many people died. And that was contrary to how we should have handled COVID from a healthcare and from a medical point of view. So Biden may hit that too. He may say, look, Trump, you had the wrong policy there. You're responsible for all of these, illness and all this death. Who knows? I just see that spin. And I hadn't really thought of that one because honestly, COVID to me is sort of a distant memory, but Biden may bring it up and say, Trump, you had these rallies. And at Tulsa, for example, where everybody was there and not wearing a mask, and they were talking about Herman Cain, and he actually died of COVID after being in this large rally. Biden was involved in closing economy. That would be Trump's recourse on that. But I think that's another one. But as far as Biden's record, whatever it is, he needs to promote it, because that's the reason why you get a second term, is because you did a good job, not because you attacked your opponent. I think that's because the opponent here is a very complicated opponent. I think, they call him Teflon Don. I mean, he's been indicted, he's got convictions, but the truth is, to try to hit Trump, Trump will just hit back and say, well, Joe, you don't, it's going to just deteriorate. I think he takes the position that he's showing he's competent, he can function, he's going to be able to do good things, and he's going to deal with these issues. I mean, again, I'm not greatly supportive of Biden's politics, but I think that the idea that, go attack Trump, I think that backfires, because then what it is, it's just going to deteriorate into a whole, match of, you're a clown, as Biden says, and Trump says you're Sleepy Joe and all that. And there's no point in that. The point is to keep it on the high level, to talk about their achievements, whatever they are. Look, Biden went back into the nuclear deal. That's a very detrimental thing, in my opinion, in foreign policy. And in fact, one could trace those actions to the Iran supporting Hamas. We gave all this money to Iran.
Right.
That's a very important thing.
Absolutely.
And the wars, we're in all these wars. So there was a lot to talk about.